Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching you how to make a cozy turtleneck sweater. One can never have too many handcrafted sweaters, so here's one more. The body on this one is mainly half double crochet, so it's a quick workup. The sleeves Suzette for style, and there's a luscious turtleneck to snuggle in, so it's definitely cold weather approved. Speaking of, if you're looking to crochet things to keep the chill away, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of beautiful modern crochet patterns, including plenty of sweaters and cardigans with new patterns weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado, for this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 650 grams of yarn, and that's 1,000 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you prefer Star Wars or Star Trek. I would have to go with Star Wars, but that's only because I haven't seen Star Trek yet. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5mm hook, and we're going to start by making a chain starting 1 inch underneath our underarm down to where we want the bottom of this top to be. Now we can make this cropped or full length. I'm going to make mine full length. So I need a total of 13 inches or 33 centimeters, and that is a chain of 55 for me. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do our first half double crochet row. So start by blocking off that last chain, and we're going to do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And what we're going to do from here is yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. That is our first half double crochet. Let's do this again. Yarn over, into that following chain, insert your hook, pull through all 3. Continue putting 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. Now that we've put 1 half double crochet into every chain and left the last one, we're now going to do an increase of 3 half double crochets. So how that's going to work is yarn over and insert into that last chain with 3 half double crochets. So into that last chain with our first half double crochet, into that same last chain with a 2nd, and then into that same last chain with a 3rd half double crochet. When we have our increase of 3, we're going to get started on our next even number row, or our row 2, so chain 2 and flip our work. We're now going to be doing back loop half double crochets to get a really pretty ribbing, and each of our even number rows is going to start with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. So we're all going to yarn over, find that last stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop with 1 half double crochet, then into that same first back loop, a 2nd half double crochet. To finish up our even number row, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So just yarn over, into that following stitch, insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, and half double crochet per usual. At the end of the row, we are going to chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one, so we can do an increase of 3 together just once more. Now, fun fact, we are not doing an increase of 3 for every row, because if we do an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets, the increase will start to curve, when really we just want a steep incline that goes from underarm to the base of our neck. We have our row 1, and 2 already finished, and we're nearly finished with our row 3. At the end of every odd number row, we're going to do an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets into the last stitch from our previous row. So all together, we're going to yarn over, find that last stitch from our previous row and insert in through that back loop, and do an increase of 3 half double crochets. So there's my first, there's my second, and there is my third half double crochet. Now just to get started on our row 4 or any even number row, we're all going to chain 2 and flip our work. Like I said in one of our previous clips, every even number row is going to start with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles. So yarn over, into the last stitch from our previous row with our first half double, then into that same back loop with our second half double, and continue putting 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. From here, we're going to repeat our 2 previous rows. So our odd number row is going to be 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, while doing an increase of 3 back loop half doubles into the last. And every even number row is going to start with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles, and then 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch to reach the end of the row. We're going to need to continue on with this until we have the size that can reach from mid-underarm all the way over to the base of our neck. Now it doesn't need to reach the base of our neck, it just needs to be aligned with the edge of the base of our neck. And as a really quick sizing tip, we want to make sure that we're keeping the first row as close to 1 inch underneath our underarm as possible, because the more amount of rows that we make, the larger our armhole is going to be, and we want our armholes to be fairly snug. And I'll meet you back right after an even number row, or right after we do an increase of 3 half double crochets, so we can work on the body right after that. I have my underarm all finished. I have a total of 13 rows, and my width is just about 5 inches or 13 centimeters, and my total height is 17.5 inches or 45 centimeters. And now we're going to start working on our body, and all that's going to be is back loop half double crochets working across our chest from the base of our neck across to the other side of the base of our neck. So pretty simple. Since we all should have ended along the top, let's all start this row with a chain 2 and flip our work. Now that our work is flipped, all we're going to do is yarn over, find the last stitch from our previous row, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into that first stitch, and then into that next another back loop half double crochet, and that's it. We're going to continue to put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. At the end of the row, another back loop half double crochet row. So this body portion will not have any increases or decreases. I'll meet you back once we're now on the other side of the base of our neck, along the top, or right after an odd number row. So I am back, and the chest portion of my front panel is finished. I have a total of 31 rows, and my width is now 11 inches or 28 centimeters, and now we're going to get started on the other underarm portion. So since we all should have ended along the top, we're going to start our following row with a decrease of 3 back loop half double crochets. So let's all start with a chain 2 and flip our work. Now to do our decrease of 3 back loop half doubles, we're all going to yarn over and insert our hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, and into the stitch right after that, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 loops on our hook. All we're going to do is yarn over, pull through all 5, and that's our decrease of 3 back loop half doubles. And from here, we're going to put 1 back loop half double into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we have 2 left, because then we're going to be doing a decrease of 2 back loop half doubles. So I've just finished up my first decrease row that started with a decrease of 3 back loop half doubles and made my way down. At the end of that row, I did do a chain 2, flip my work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and left the last 2, so now we're going to do a decrease of 2 back loop half doubles. So all we're going to do is yarn over. Insert our hook into that second to last back loop, pull through, and into that last back loop, pull through. Then once we have 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through all 4. And right here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So we're going to start with a decrease of 3 back loop half double crochets, and then 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch all the way down. Then our even number row is going to start with a chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and do a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets into the last 2 stitches. And we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows that we started this piece off with. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut. I am back and the entirety of one of my panels is all finished up. I have a total of 44 rows and my width is just about 16 inches or 41 centimeters. And once we had this all finished up, I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. Once we have that, we're going to be making one more panel that is exactly the same. Now once we have both of our panels all finished up, I will meet you back so that we can seam the sides together. So now that we have both of our panels finished up, the next thing we're going to do is seam everything together. So first things first, let's insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, yarn over and pull through everything, then do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now we're going to do a single crochet seam. So let's all start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert our hook. We're all going to find that next stitch into the back panel, insert our hook in through there, and then we're going to single crochet per usual. Let's do this again. Into the next stitch into the front panel, insert, next stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet. And that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat what we did here on the other side. So now that everything is seamed together, we're going to get started on our neckline. So first things first, we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of the front panel. And we just want to make sure that we're inserting our hook into the stitch that's in between our last increase row and our first row where we don't do an increase. So just into that available space right in between. We are next going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. That chain 1 does not count as a stitch. Now from here, we're going to be working across the body, so just into the half double crochet rows that do not have any increases or decreases into them, and we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So this is my first side row that I have right here. I'm going to insert my hook in through that top loop, and if you're like me, you should have a tail end. Just place that over your hook so we don't have to weave that in later, and all we're going to do is single crochet once. Into our following side row that we should have, we're going to single crochet twice into there. So there is 1, and then into that same side row, there is 2. Now I've just worked into my first 2 side rows. Let's just do the next set together. This is my next side row. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop with 1 single crochet, and then into that next side row with 2 single crochets. So there is 1, and there is 2. And we're going to continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row until we reach our last side row that worked across the front. Now that I've worked my way across the top of my front panel, we're now going to make a chain that is in multiples of 3, making sure that that multiple of 3 ends on an odd number that can reach up and over our shoulder to touch the top corner stitch within the back panel. Now for those of you that have my numbers, I needed a total of 3 inches or 8 centimeters, so I made a chain 15. Once we have our chain, flip our work and I'll show you how we're going to connect it into the back panel. Now connecting it into the back panel is going to be fairly simple. We're going to find that available space in between this last increase row and our first back loop half double crochet row with no increases and no decreases. So just into that available space, and we're going to slip stitch into there, and that slip stitch does not count as a stitch, we just need to connect it. And from here we're going to continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, working our way across. So just do the first one. This is my first side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with a single. Into my next side row, this is my top loop, and insert into there with 2 singles. And continue to work your way across the top of our back panel. So I've just worked my way across the top of our back panel, and now we're going to make the same chain that we made on this side over here. So if you have my numbers, I made a chain of 15, so I made another chain of 15 here. To finish off this row, once we have our chain, flip our work and I'll show you how we're going to connect it. And now that our work is flipped, all we're going to do is find that chain space that we made when we started off this row. We are going to insert our hook in through there, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. And now our first row for the neckline, there we go, is nice and connected. And just a really quick tip, right after we finish up this single crochet row, this is going to be as wide as this neckline can stretch. So once we've slip stitched into that chain space, try this on and just make sure that it can fit over your head quite nicely. If it's a little bit too tight, redo some stitches with a tighter grip, or if it's a little too loose, redo some stitches with a looser grip. Now right after that, we're going to be doing one more single crochet row. So right after that slip stitch, all we're going to do is chain 1 and put 1 single crochet into every stitch and chain, making our way all the way around. Once we have, slip stitch into that chain space, and then I'll meet you back to get started on the length of our turtleneck. And now that our single crochet row is finished up, we're now going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our turtleneck to be, keeping in mind that we will be folding it in half. So I'd like for my turtleneck to be roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 20. So now that we have our chain, we're going to do a slip stitch row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert. And when we have those 2 loops on our hook, yarn over and gently pull through everything. Let's do that again. Into that next chain, insert, yarn over, and pull through everything. And continue putting 1 slip stitch into every chain till we reach the base. And just as a really quick tip, we want to make sure that we're not tugging our stitches too tightly after we finish it, otherwise the following row can be a little bit too tight to work into. And now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're now going to connect it into the base. So we're going to find that next available stitch and slip stitch our row 1 into there. Now that slip stitch into the base does not count as a stitch, we just needed to connect our row 1. And getting started on our row 2, we're going to need to work our way up, so slip stitch into that following stitch into the base as well. That also doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. And now we're all going to be doing back loop slip stitches. So start by finding the last stitch from our previous row and insert in through that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, insert, and pull through everything. And we're going to continue doing this to reach the end of the row. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. We are back and we have our rows 1 and row 2 finished, and we're about to finish up our row 3. We should have all made our way all the way down with our back loop slip stitches, and now we're going to connect it into the base. So now into that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert our hook with a slip stitch, and now our row 3 is connected. Now we're going to be repeating our 2 previous rows, so let's just get started on our row 4. And to do that, we need to work our way up to the following row, so slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and now put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then that's it. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, so back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, and making sure that we're connecting it into the base the same way that we just did, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back to seam up our turtleneck. So we've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. Now we're going to seam everything together, so let's all start by inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and making sure that our work is still flipped right side out, we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Right after that, we're going to do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we're now going to do an outside loop slip stitch seam. So let's all start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert into that front loop. Find that next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. Let's do this again. Next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. And that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and when we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that our turtleneck is all seamed up, the next thing we're going to start working on is our sleeve. So let's all start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out and right side up. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam. Then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 just to secure, and we're going to start off our sleeve with a single crochet row along our armhole. So we have a few side rows to work up. We're going to be alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, and then once we reach the base of our neckline, we're going to put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row, working our way back down. And we're going to need to insert our stitch markers into some places, so let's get started with our first single crochet. So let's all start by finding our first available side row, and this is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook in through that top loop. And if you're like me, you have some tail ends, place that over your hook. And we're going to single crochet. There's my first one. Into my following side row, I'm going to insert into that top loop with 2 single crochets. So there's one, then into that same top loop with 2 single crochets. And that's it. We're going to continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets until we reach our last side row right over here. So now that I've single crocheted my way up my underarm portion, we're now going to insert our stitch marker into that last single crochet that we made so we know where the underarm ends. From here, since we just worked into our last side row, we're going to put 1 single crochet into every stitch, working our way across the bottom of our neckline. And just as a quick tip, we should have the same amount of single crochets as chains that we made when we made our way across our neckline. So for those of you that have my numbers, I'm going to have 15 single crochets right here. So turn your work just a little bit. We're going to find that first stitch and insert your hook with a single crochet. And I'll meet you at the other side of our neckline. So we've just made our way across the bottom of our neckline, putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. And now we're going to work our way down our underarm, continuing to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. Now I just wanted to meet you back to make sure that once we did our first side half double crochet row, we're going to be inserting our stitch marker into that stitch so that it matches this stitch marker over here. So we're now working into our first available side row into the body. I'm going to insert my hook into there, starting with just 1 single crochet, and I'm going to insert my stitch marker into the top of that stitch. And from here, continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets to reach the end of the row. Then slip stitch into the chain space. So now that we have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, we're now going to make an odd number chain the length that we'd like for our sleeve to be, so we can make this as long or as short as we'd like. So I'd actually like to make mine a long sleeve, and I need a total of 16 inches or 41 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 69. Now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on our Suzette stitch. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 does not count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. And into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with our first Suzette stitch set, which is going to be a single and double crochet into the same chain. So let's all start by bringing our hook down into that chain and start with 1 single crochet. So there is 1 single, and then into that same chain with a double crochet. So yarn over, into that same chain, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now that is our first Suzette stitch set. Let's do the next one. After every Suzette stitch set, we are going to be skipping that following stitch or chain for this row, because that double crochet that we just did counts as that following stitch. If we work directly into that next stitch, we will be accidentally increasing. So we're always going to skip that following stitch and into the stitch right after, insert with a single and a double crochet. Let's do this just once more. After that Suzette stitch set, skip a stitch, into the following, a single, and also into that same stitch, a double crochet. And we're going to continue to do our Suzette stitch set until we have 2 chains left. So I made my way all the way down with my Suzette stitches, and we should all have 1, 2 chains left, and into that last chain we're going to be doing an increase of 3 half double crochets. So we should already know how to do our increase of 3 half doubles. All we're going to do is yarn over, skip that second to last stitch, and then into that last, insert with 3 half double crochets. There is my first, there is my second, and here is my third half double crochet. And now we need to connect it into the base. So all we're going to do to connect every odd number row is count up 1, count up 2. Into that second stitch that we counted into the base, we're going to slip stitch it into there to connect. So insert, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. And that slip stitch does not count as a stitch, that's just to connect, and our row 1 is finished. Now we're only going to be increasing into every other row. So to work our way up to our row 2, we're going to insert into that next stitch into the base with another slip stitch. That slip stitch also does not count as a stitch, we just needed to work our way up, and flip our work. And now our row 2, or any even number row, is not going to have an increase into that row. So all we're going to do is find the last stitch from our previous row, which should be the top of that last half double crochet, and insert into there with a single and also a double crochet. There's our first Suzette stitch set for this row. Let's do that again. Skip the following stitch, into the next, a single and a double crochet. And we're going to continue to skip a stitch, into the following, do our Suzette stitch set until we have 2 stitches left. And a really quick tip when it comes to doing our Suzette stitch sets, each of our sets should be worked into the previous row's single crochet to get the texture that we want. So since I just finished a set, we're going to skip that following stitch, and that should be a double crochet from our previous row, and we can tell because it's a little bit taller than the next one. So we're going to skip that stitch and into that next stitch, which should be a single crochet, and we can tell because it's a little bit shorter. Insert with a single and double. And I will meet you back when we have 2 stitches left. So we're nearly finished with our row 2. We should all have 1, 2 stitches left. And now we're just going to half double crochet into the last stitch from our previous row to keep this end nice and blunt. So yarn over, skip the second to last stitch, and then into the last, insert with a half double crochet. And now to get started on our row 3, we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. We're now going to be increasing at the end of every odd number row. So just to get started on our row 3, we're going to find that first stitch from our previous row, which should be the top of that half double crochet, and insert with our first Suzette stitch set, so a single and a double, skip 1 stitch and into the stitch right after, a single and a double. And we're going to continue to do this until we have 2 stitches left. We should all have 1, 2 rows finished, and our third row nearly finished. We should all have 2 stitches left at the end of our third row, and we're going to increase into that last stitch. So just like how we did our row 1, we're going to yarn over, skip that second to last stitch, and then into the last, insert with an increase of 3 half double crochets. So there is 1, there is 2, and there is 3 half double crochets all into that same last stitch. And now from here, we're going to need to connect it into the base. So we're going to count up 1, count up 2. Into that second stitch into the base, slip stitch into there. And now our row 3 is finished. And just to get started on our row 4, we're going to need to slip stitch into that next stitch into the base. Those 2 slip stitches don't count as a stitch, that's just to connect our rows, and flip our work. Now, like I said in one of our previous clips, each of our even number rows will not have an increase into it. So just find that last stitch from our previous row and insert with 1 Suzette stitch set, skip a stitch with another set, continue this until we have 2 stitches left. At the end of the row, we're going to half double crochet into that last stitch. And we're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows, making our way all the way up until our last row is worked into that stitch marker stitch along the top. And then I'll meet you back so we can start working on the width of our sleeve. Alright, so I am all finished with the increased side of my sleeve. Now my last row should have been worked into that stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to continue on with our Suzette stitch rows, working our way across the bottom of our neckline until we reach our following stitch marker stitch, but now without any increases or decreases, so we're just going to work straight across. So for those of you that ended at the base like me, all we're going to do is slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, so the same way that we would have done as if we were doing our increase rows, and then we're going to do our Suzette stitch row, making our way all the way down. So that is normal, and then at the end of that row, chain 1, flip our work, and then do our Suzette stitch sets until we have 2 stitches left. Now for those of you that have ended along the outside, what you guys are going to do is chain 1, flip your work, and then do our Suzette stitch sets, making our way all the way back when you guys have 2 stitches left as well. Either way, I'll meet you back when we all have 2 stitches left right next to the base, just to show you how we're going to end our odd number rows for this portion. Alright, so we should all be back, and we're now ready to connect our Suzette stitch row to the base of our neck. So we all should have met back when we have 1, 2 stitches left right before the base of our neck, and all we're going to do, since we are not going to be doing any increases or decreases across our shoulder, is just half double crochet into that last stitch from our previous row to keep this edge blunt. And now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we normally would. So all we're going to do is count up 1, 2 stitches into the base, slip stitch into there, and that's it. Just to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work and do our Suzette stitches till we reach the end of the row, making sure that we end on just 1 half double crochet. We're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then repeat all the way down. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 Suzette stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, working across the base of our neckline until our last row is worked into the stitch right before our following stitch marker stitch. And then I'll meet you back to show you how we're going to do our decreases back down. I am back, and the width of our sleeve is all finished up. We have worked our way across the bottom of our neckline, and we've stopped at the stitch that ends right before our following stitch marker stitch. Now let's get started on the following decrease side. So I have flipped my work over, and now we're going to do our following row. Now working our way down the decrease side, we're going to be doing a decrease at the end of every odd number row, similar to how we did an increase at the end of every odd number row when we were doing the increase side. So since I'm along the base, I'm about to get started on my following even number row. So I'm going to get that row started. That row will not have any increases or decreases. At the end of that row, I'm going to chain 1, flip my work, and then do my Suzette stitch sets, making my way all the way down until I have a total of 4 stitches left. For those of you that have ended along the outer end, all you're going to do is chain 1, flip your work, and do your Suzette stitch sets until you also have a total of 4 stitches left. Then I will meet everyone back so that we can do our decrease of 3 half double crochets together. So we are back and we're ready to do our decrease of 3 half double crochets. We should all have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left right before the base. So all we're going to do is yarn over. We're going to skip that following stitch, which is our 4th to last, into that next stitch, which is our 3rd to last, insert pull through, into that next stitch, insert pull through, and into that last stitch, pull through. We should all have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. So yarn over, pull through all 5, and now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we would normally. So we're going to count up 1, 2 stitches. Into that next stitch, into that second stitch, insert with a slip stitch to close off this row. And then our following row is going to be yet another Suzette stitch row with no increases and no decreases. And that is it. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. And when we don't, I will meet you back so we can seam it all together. So I am back and I've just finished up the decrease side of my sleeve, and now we're going to seam everything together. Now this is going to be a single crochet seam, so the same seam that we did for the side. So let's all make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. Now that our work is flipped wrong side out, we're going to be inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and all we're going to do is yarn over, pull through everything, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now just to do the first single crochet seam together, we're going to find that first stitch into the front panel, insert your hook, stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and single crochet, and that is just about it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that our sleeve is all seamed up, we're now going to do our cuff. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our sleeve. We're now going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we're all going to start with a single crochet row to help cinch our sleeve. So we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So let's all start by finding that first available side row. This is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook, and single crochet just once. Let's do this again. Into this following side row, find that top loop, insert your hook, and single crochet, and that's it. We're going to continue to put 1 single crochet into every side row, and when we make our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space. Now that our single crochet row is done, we're now going to start working on the cuff. So we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be, and I'd like for mine to be about 2 inches or 4 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 8. Now that we have our chain, let's block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything, pretty much the same way that we did the turtleneck, and continue putting 1 slip stitch into every chain. And now that we've put one slip stitch into every chain, we're now going to connect it into the base. So let's all start by finding that next available stitch, insert, pull through everything, and that slip stitch does not count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And our falling row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row, just like how we did the turtleneck. So just find that next stitch into the base, insert, pull through everything, and flip our work. And now from here, put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then that's it. We're going to continue putting one back loop slip stitch into every stitch at the end of the row. Chain one, flip our work, and then one back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, connecting it into the base the same way. From here, we're just going to continue to repeat these two previous rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches into the base left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back so we can seam everything together. And now that we've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows, we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to do an outside loop slip stitch seam. So let's all start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Now, to do our first outside loop slip stitch seam, we're all going to start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert only in through that front loop. Find that next stitch into the back panel and insert only in through that back loop. Then yarn over and pull through all three loops. And again, into that next stitch into the front panel, insert in through that front loop. Into that next stitch into the back panel, insert in through that back loop. Yarn over and pull through everything, and that's it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and when we don't, do a chain up a one and cut, and then repeat everything that we just did here on the other side. And now that we have both of our sleeves all finished up, we are all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!